Have you ever wanted... Look, this thing is huge. Have you ever wanted Star Wars landscapes? What if you could get those landscapes in stunning detail but also subtlety so that only true fans can catch the beauty of the design you have? Meet Gallery 94, the place where you can get some of the great Star Wars locations brought to life. Key locations that you can find yourself are Endor, Hoth, Dagobah, Scarif, Tatooine, and of course Bespin, like I have here. The detail of this piece is literally insane. The canvas quality is remarkable, and you can get these in various sizes, such as this massive size canvas right here in my hands, or even larger, such as the 3-panel triptychs. You can get the quality of remarkable interior design art with a true celebration of your fandom to this legendary universe. As you can see with all the bubble wrap here, Gallery 94 does an incredible job of protecting your art so everything gets to you in mint condition. If you thought this was enough bubble wrap, wait until you see the package that this arrives in on your doorstep. Not to mention, if you love the art you get different art styles or even pillows to add even more flair to your home, with just a touch of that Star Wars greatness. Get your art with my 15% discount code PENTY15 and celebrate your love of Star Wars in style. Special thanks to Gallery 94 for sponsoring today's video. Hello. Our story begins on Geonosis. Anakin was sitting inside of a Republic medical camp with a group of wounded clones, and Padme. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Mace, Windu, and a couple other surviving Knights and Masters were gathered around in a semicircle near the forward command post. In the distance, they could hear a couple cannons blasting off, and combat, but it was the last of the Geonosians saying goodnight before they lost control of their home world. Anakin looked at the clone medic, who didn't even have his helmet on. He walked up and placed a back stent on Anakin's arm, and asked the general if he was alright. He nodded his head. As he asked for the trooper's name, he gave a couple of numbers to which Anakin asked for his real name, and the CT medic was surprised. The Kaminoans had told them that the Jedi wouldn't want to know their names, the ones they weren't supposed to have. It was conditioning on the part of the Kaminoans, to make the transition into Order 66 a little easier. The trooper told him that his name was Chet, and Anakin thanked him, with his name, for helping. Chet bobbed his head with a smile. Padme asked Anakin if he was alright, and he nodded at her. Yeah, he'd be alright, but he wanted to make Dooku pay for what he had done. Padme understood. It hadn't been an easy couple days for Anakin. First he lost his mother, then he lost his arm. Strenuous. Chet interrupted, asking Anakin if he'd like an arm now or wait until they got back to Coruscant or to a cruiser. He shrugged, whatever was easier. So the trooper moved along to fetch an arm for Anakin. Skywalker turned back and told Padme that things had gotten off to a rough start, if he didn't say so himself. She agreed, looking back over his shoulder. This wouldn't bode well for the galaxy. This devolving into war was potentially the worst thing that could have ever happened. Palpatine would go all out on the Separatists now, and nothing would stop him. Anakin turned his head, surprised that she didn't agree with Palpatine's stances. After all, the two of them were from the same planet. Anakin and Padme continued chatting with each other, and while Chet was away, they suggested marriage on Naboo to cement their bond. If anything happened to the other, they would forever be intertwined with each other. This was a good idea in both of their minds, so they would go forward with it after they left Geonosis and got their chance to return to Naboo. Padme wasn't seeing it now because she was truly blinded by love, but if she returned to Coruscant, there was a legitimate chance that she could challenge the Republic to make a better decision and not follow the path of war. That escaped her mind at the current moment. Chet returned and told Anakin that this would hurt. Padme held Anakin's hand, and Obi-Wan caught this out of the corner of his eye. But he could see the smile on his student's face, so he was alright with it. Kenobi just slightly moved to the side and blocked anyone else from seeing what he had seen. The clone medic attached Anakin's new golden arm to his body. It was gorgeous, and Anakin asked why they were housing golden arms, and the trooper laughed. He told them that Kaminoans were brilliant scientists, but their supply department was lacking. The rest of the arms in the current batch were also gold. It was a typo or something, but the new shipment and the rest of the shipments for the coming war would be black. Anakin nodded as the trooper attached the arm. Despite it hurting in some places, Anakin watched the entire thing while holding Padme's hand. When it was fully attached, he moved the fingers on his hand and felt them. It was weird. It was semi-similar to what it felt like to use his hand before, but not quite the same. He unlatched his fingers from Padme's hand and touched the edge of his golden arm. It was smooth and robotic. So weird, too. He flicked his wrist and the movement was stiff. Chet told Anakin that things would be a little awkward for a little bit, but He should settle nicely into it. He thanked the clone trooper for all of his help. Chet smiled and moved on to his next patient. Skywalker and Padme walked away from the little area and towards the massive Colosseum. They were more or less looking for more privacy to talk to each other about their proposed marriage plans. It was very spur of the moment. But what about this wasn't spur of the moment? They only reunited like a week ago, if that, so they might as well just enjoy their time together and get everything set in motion. As they walked through the gates, they could see something in the middle of the arena itself. Padme asked if that was a bounty hunter's kid. Anakin squinted his eyes and looked over and noticed him. Yeah, it looked like it. They were both about to ask each other the same thing, which was, why was the kid still here? In his hands, they could see from changing their perspective that he was holding his father's helmet. Padme raised her hand to her mouth. This wasn't right. They didn't know much about this kid, other than he was Jango's son. Padme stepped forward, preparing to go to his side, and Anakin asked what she was doing. She looked back, with a face of sincerity, but also seriousness. She reminded of what she told him in the Attack of the Clones deleted scene from her family villa. Anakin thought back and remembered. When she was young, she accompanied her father and Anaconda Far, the Shadabi Boron, where they were trying to relocate an entire civilization away from the dying sun. She and a couple other kids were together during this relocation. The one kid she had referenced on Naboo was Nakitulo, and she couldn't save them. This was, at least unspoken, but semi-true in her mind. Her chance to save another kid. Anakin watched her step forward and he followed her, seeing where she was coming from and 100% willing to support it. The two of them crossed the battlefield, stepping past destroyed battle droids of different variants. There were dead Geonosians, animals, and Jedi that filled the battlefield. Padme and Anakin stopped a short ways away from Boba, and Padme pushed Anakin back gently, telling him that the kid might be frightened away because of Anakin being a Jedi. That made him feel bad, but then, upon looking at Jango's body, he understood why. He stepped back and observed. Padme gently called out and asked if the kid was alright. Boba dropped the helmet and searched for a weapon. He asked her to stay back, and she kept her distance. Like a feral animal, he was ready to strike, but wasn't sure of the legitimacy of this being a threat or not. Padme raised her hands in front of her body and told him that she wasn't here to hurt him. She slowly lowered herself to the ground and told him that she was here to help. He looked at her with confusion and then back to the helmet. If she was here to help, then why did her Republic war dogs come here and kill his father? She told him that she didn't know the clones were coming. He cut back with a voice desperate to strike with revenge. He told her it wasn't those insurgent test tube creations that did this. It was the Jedi. Padme got on her knees and she told him that it had to have been an accident. Boba snapped back with viciousness, telling her that it was a Jedi who did it with intention. Anakin had seen it. While he didn't agree with Windu's decisions on the Council, in the heat of the moment, Windu couldn't have been blamed here. Jango was a renowned Jedi hunter, someone who had killed a Jedi without batting an eye. It wasn't known to most, but Jango had killed a number of Jedi with his bare hands. He was a killing machine. His death was rightly done by Windu. Padme frowned. She tried to explain a way around it, but she couldn't find the words. She came here to make up for her own trauma by correcting another, but it didn't seem like there was anything she could say. Sometimes someone doesn't have the right words, and she didn't at this moment. She tried to reason with him or be understanding, but she, aside from being empathetic, couldn't latch on to what he was feeling. Anakin could sense this. Boba had stumped her because she didn't want to slander the Jedi for a battle decision, but for Boba, it was impossible to understand. Anakin knew that it was not a judgmental, understanding thing. It was more of an emotional one. Anakin called out the boy, who then saw the Jedi robes and looked for a blaster. Boba told Anakin that he and his kind would all die. Skywalker raised his hands above his head, but slouched them. They weren't fully upright. He told the kid that he wasn't here to hurt him either. They had both seen that he was here alone, and they wanted to see if he was alright. Boba snapped again. Why would they care? They had no purpose being here. They won their battle. Go on, win another with his father's clones. They both realized in this moment that Boba was a clone too. They didn't know how they made the connection, but it made sense. Boba was latching onto his only parental figure, which was Jango. Anakin got down to Boba's level and told him that he understood what he was going through. Boba looked at him with fire in his eyes. He couldn't possibly understand. According to his dad, the Jedi were emotionless beings, creatures capable of great death and destruction. It was through their lack of empathy that wars begin. Anakin shook his head. That wasn't true. The Jedi were not that. But this was not about the Jedi. This was about the three of them right here living in this moment. Anakin told Boba that his mother had just been killed by a clan of raiders on Tatooine. He understood what he was going through. Boba wanted to deny, but he listened, as Anakin expressed sympathy, understanding, and compassion. Anakin said that he knew he was afraid. It was a big galaxy out there, and without his sole parent, how else could he exist? In this moment, a true form of relation grew between the two of them. Anakin and Boba were without a parent. Anakin a mother, Boba a father. They were both so similar and hadn't even realized it. Anakin outstretched his arm, telling Boba that they didn't know each other, but they didn't have to hate each other. They were different, sure, but their experiences, their moments of vulnerability were so similar. They were both angry because someone they loved was taken from them. It was unfair to love because love doesn't always stay. Sometimes it fades, sometimes it's taken, and other times it just dies. Anakin's eyes watered a little, remembering his own mom, but he told Boba that to love is to live, and if he wanted to stay here and be angry, he could be, but that wasn't living. His eyes drifted over to Padme. Anakin was blocking out his emotions around his mother's death and replacing them with love for Padme. But this moment allowed him to truly realize what he had lost and consciously recognize what he was trying to fixate on, which still wasn't technically healthy, but that's alright. He told the kid, whose name he still didn't know yet, that this wouldn't fix things. Maybe it wouldn't ever heal the wounds. He didn't know himself. But maybe something positive could come. Anakin was promising nothing, but he was gifting friendship. Boba was alone. No one was here. Sure, Jango had people that could look after him. But the crime world was kill or be killed. If Boba got sucked into that, it would be a lifelong game that had no winners. Anakin was offering a chance to get out of it. Boba looked at the helmet and knew his father would only want what was best for him, but he so badly wanted to be the fighter and bounty hunter that his father was. That therein laid the question. Would being a bounty hunter make him, himself, a happy person? Would killing others or hunting down prizes in the form of people bring him fulfillment? Or would he spend his entire life chasing a goal that would never give him anything in the form of real warmth? Kamino wasn't warm. Taun We wasn't warm. The only thing in his life that was warm or comforting was Jango. This was a chance to have it again. Bossk and Aurra Sing weren't warm. They were both cold. Of course they were, one was a lizard. This was a chance and Anakin offered it as a chance. It wasn't to be wasted or let slip away. He could have a life of choice and freedom, one where he could make friends and find family. He envisioned both lifestyles in his mind's eye. Boba could see himself wearing his father's blue armor, fighting off the likes of Cad Bane, Dirge, and Dengar. He could smell the ickiness of Jabba's throne room. He could feel the raw power of stealing someone's life. Or, on the other side, he could feel friendship, love, compassion. He assumed that these two in front of him were something like friends. Maybe they would be his friends. That'd be nice. Boba didn't really have many friends. That sliver of hope, the one that hadn't died off with his father, sat there in their hands. What they did with it would entirely determine Boba's future. Because Boba showed so much hesitancy, Padme was able to get a Republic shuttle to drop down into the area and take them away from the battle. Obi-Wan got a message from his Padawan about taking the Senator back to Naboo in case another attack came. While it was done without permission, Obi-Wan had to give his students some credit for finally taking the initiative. Little did he know why it was being done. Boba didn't really say anything during their trip to Naboo. Padme and Anakin spoke to each other a little bit, and Boba kinda dozed in and out of sleep. The two new lovebirds had spoke about marriage on Geonosis, but they had more time to properly discuss it in hyperspace, and Anakin was genuinely really committed to it. The sensation of falling in love was driving these two forward super quickly, but they had to really consider it now. In theory, it sounded like a lot of fun, but they had to look at this realistically. They couldn't afford to do it publicly. Anakin was a Jedi, it was forbidden. She was a senator, and that was, well, you know, Jedi have Jedi parts and senators have senator parts. Doesn't really work like that. But Anakin offered a resolution to it. He truthfully didn't think he'd become a Jedi Knight anytime soon, and as much as he loved Obi-Wan, being a Padawan and fighting in a war didn't sound super pleasant, especially not under Obi-Wan's orders. So he suggested this resolution. Padme asked what it was, and he told her that he would leave the Jedi Order, find some livelihood on Naboo, and they could adopt Boba. The endorphins were in the air. This sounded like a brilliant plan, but even Padme needed to know. Did Anakin really want this? He told her that he'd been thinking about her every day for the last 10 years. He wanted this more than anything. Let's not think about how kinda creepy that is and just move on to Padme's logic, which was somehow that works for her. If he was truly committed to being free from the confines of the Jedi Order, then she would support it, as long as in the end they supported each other, and he promised that he would. Their conversation ended with a kiss, and they waited until they arrived on Naboo, where they would still get married. It just wouldn't be as secret. A little jarring for Padme's parents and sister, but they trusted her judgment. She was 24 years old as a senator. She had this. With the two of them becoming officially married and Anakin sending his resignation to the Jedi and Obi-Wan via hologram, everything was set into motion. Though the biggest concern for the newlyweds was raising Boba. Luckily, they had the Naberries, but still. Out of everything they rushed through in the past week, they definitely kinda rushed this part. From seeing each other for the first time in 10 years to adopting a kid as newlyweds in the span of a week, they'd be divorced by next Tuesday if they kept this pace up. Sure, it was rushed, but they did have a trust in each other, and they did love each other. Now that Anakin wasn't a Jedi, it was time for them to properly handle the maturity that came with being in an adult relationship. But also, the kind that came with overseeing the development of a kid that was only 9 years younger than Anakin. Oh joy, they didn't really think this through much, did they? Padme had some time to stay on Naboo, because Jar Jar was overseeing things on Coruscant. Obviously, she had put her trust in the Gungan to follow her policies and make decisions based off what she would do. Didn't really do that, but it's alright. Padme and Anakin would spend this time with Boba, who was a lot more cold than he was when they first met him. Boba was a product of his father's lifestyle. He was emotionally stinted because he didn't have a supportive base around him. Jango was a good dad, no doubt about that, but it was the fact that he wasn't always around. He traveled a lot, and Boba had no mother, so a lot of his development was internal. He understood himself, kinda, but he also didn't have a lot of friends either. Tanwi was about as far as he went with that. Thanks to Jango, Boba didn't like the clones because he saw them as lesser beings, another trait he picked up from Jango. So that left him here. The Naberries were kind and open to Boba, but unlike how they found him on Geonosis, he was back to being his true self. Ironically, it was only because of how vulnerable he was following Jango's death on Geonosis that he was able to warm up to Anakin and Padme. Without that vulnerability, Boba would have never come to Naboo with them. His fathership was still on Geonosis as it was, but Boba's mind was almost lost. He was going through the motions. Naboo was soft and delicate, not like Kamino. The world he knew was harsh, cold, and brute. The waves were the size of star cruisers, the storms rattled the facilities, and the air conditioning in Tapoka City was chilling. Boba knew nothing of an ordinary world. He spent a lot of time inside when they first came to Naboo, because the light was too bright. This prompted Padme to suggest to Anakin that he and Boba spend more time together. Aside from the fact that they both wanted to help, it was in the fact that Boba and Anakin were so similar that it would have to be Anakin that Boba spent the most time with, so that he could open up. Skywalker agreed, and so that's what he went to do. Anakin would struggle with this a lot too, but he'd get Boba out of his room and the two of them would take a walk to the forest nearby. Anakin would do a lot of the speaking on this walk, telling Boba that he understood him, at least he thought he did. Anakin didn't have a father, so he was only with his mom before she died. Knowing that Boba only had Jango, he was sure they could relate over the whole one-parent thing. Skywalker didn't focus too heavily on the deeper conversations though. He tried to ask for things that Boba liked to do, but that revealed something so tragic for the young Fett. He was just like his father. He didn't know himself because he wasn't living his life. Despite how good Jango was to him, and while he did like his martial art training and shooting blasters and some of the other skills Jango taught him, he enjoyed them because he enjoyed being with his father. His own pure enjoyment didn't exactly come from those things. It was a stunning revelation, but it almost made him resent his father in a weird way. Like wishing he could tell Jango that he wanted to do this with him, and they could have done it. But that wasn't what happened, or what could ever happen. Communication is key, and there never really was communication. Jango prepared Boba for a life of bounty hunting, and it wasn't the life Boba necessarily wanted. It just only felt like the only thing he could do to get approval and attention from his father. Boba walked with Anakin and asked him how he found joy inside the Jedi Order. Firstly, yes, Boba still resented the Jedi and everything about them, but he could see that Anakin was kind of like himself, just trying to fit in, so he was able to relate in that aspect. Secondly, he and Anakin were similar. If they could bond, it could create a chance for them to grow their relationship. Anakin smiled, slipping and catching himself on a branch and pulling himself up, before extending a hand to Boba. He shrugged, telling Boba that he found any way to do it. He was once a slave, and when he worked inside of a junk shop. but he personally loved mechanical work. Inside the temple, he tinkered with whatever he could. Sometimes it was the only joy in his day. Anakin expressed that now that he wasn't a Jedi, he could pick up where he left off. Boba became interested in this, so he asked further, and soon became enamored with what Anakin did when he was Boba's age, winning a pod race, blowing up a Trade Federation battlecruiser, building a protocol droid. Wow, that's a lot of stuff for a 10-year-old. Anakin never really thought of it as crazy, but that was fair. Regardless, this allowed them to bond. When they got midway through their hike, which was the end of their trail into the forest before coming back, they stopped at a small cliff overlooking the water. Boba and Anakin sat down, and Boba told Anakin that he hated water. It was slick and wet and it got everywhere. Anakin turned over with a grin. Maybe they weren't so different. But he told Boba that the water here was different. Maybe they could find peace in a new home together. Boba thanked Anakin for giving him the time, and nothing could be said more than that. The two of them watched the water for a little while before returning back home. A couple days later, Padme would return to Coruscant. Before she left, Boba started to become like a semi-normal kid. All the pieces weren't there yet, but he was trying to find himself, which was something he so desperately needed. Upon her return to Coruscant, much had changed. War was upon the galaxy, and she realized that had she come back, there may have been a chance to stop things, but it seemed that Jar Jar wasn't as trustworthy as she had hoped. He was a tremendous ally to Palpatine, which she couldn't really blame Jar Jar for anyways. Maybe Anakin would make a better representative in the future. Regardless, she was here to try and rally a movement to stop the war. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, spoke to Padme. He was devastated, but he wanted to know if Anakin was alright, and she promised him that he was. With this knowledge, Obi-Wan felt truly content. As long as Anakin was happy, that was all that mattered. But he did want to see him, which Padme encouraged. Anakin had expressed to her, before she left, that he felt bad about leaving Obi-Wan in the dark about his decision. On Naboo, Boba started to miss Padme. While his connection was mostly with Anakin, he did need her too. But thankfully, Sola was a great person. She had her own kids, which weren't much younger than Boba, plus Sola was Padme's older sister, so she was a good substitute for her. Anakin and Boba spent time with each other during the day, and because he was 19 trying to be a dad, he was trying to be good at something he never had aside from Obi-Wan. As things go in generations, each generation tries to correct where the previous one went overboard. So Anakin was a looser and a lot less strict version of Obi-Wan. He did put the idea of going to school to Boba's head, and he wasn't against it. The issue is, Kaminoan schooling was much different. Boba was very intelligent, and the contrast to what he would learn here on Naboo would be otherworldly. Literally, see what I did there? Anyways, the semester would end soon, and he could join if he felt comfortable with it. In the meantime, Skywalker and Fett spent time bonding over miscellaneous things, such as mechanical work, playing catch, going on hikes, or learning to fish with Padme's father. Everything was so painless, so far away from the war. Anakin would even assist Obi-Wan with a mission involving the Blue Shadow virus during the war, but for the most part, Anakin would be removed from the conflict. Boba, on the other hand, got the best of every world. He was the eldest kid of the family. Hear that? Family. Legitimate family. He really did believe it was a family. But he was the eldest kid. He made friends in the local schools, and he continued to thrive in his own interests. While it wasn't something anyone really ever saw coming, Boba found a huge interest in the arts. He loved toying around with mechanics with Anakin, but in some way he saw that as purely interest to spend more time with Anakin. Now, he did enjoy this, but he loved creating. It was something he never had the chance to do or discover because Kaminoans couldn't do art. Long necks, small canvas, long arms, not a great combination. Plus, they were borderline evil creatures. Boba wasn't like them. He had canvases in his room and often painted on the patio, to his grandparents' dismay. Of course, Anakin got his little buddy some sheets to place his canvases on top of, so he didn't mess up the fine bricks of the villa patio, but it was all good, all in good humor. Anakin also started working on his own mechanics here as well, but he did continue to train with his saber. He just never really found much use for it. Because Anakin wasn't involved in the war, Palpatine focused solely on the political ramifications. If Skywalker wasn't in the way, then not really a big deal. Sidious understood the Force. If he tried to kill Anakin, then that would upset the cosmic balance. If he killed him, the Force would create another. So, what he needed to do was maintain Padme and his own safety. If Padme, Anakin, and sure even Boba were safe, then they weren't of his concern. There were two ways Palpatine could play it. He simply went with the route of least resistance. Skywalker wasn't in the way, no reason to put him into a position where he would be. Despite Anakin's lack of involvement, it didn't really change much. The ebb and flow of Palpatine's fixed war was very similar. It just didn't rely on a singular Jedi to become the poster boy of a war effort. Instead, Anakin was able to blissfully exist on Naboo in peace. Because Skywalker never found himself inside the war, he spent time working inside the royal hangar bay of the countryside. It was an academy where special recruits came before getting shipped off to Theed. Anakin helped construct the ships and even work on them. He just simply enjoyed it. Not that he needed the money because the Nabooris were well off, but he did want to make his own living. It was great too because he went in early, around 6 or 7 in the morning, and got done around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, which was perfect time for Boba to get out of classes, and even more perfect because it was closer to 8 or 9 a.m. on Coruscant, so we could call Padme for a little bit before she started her own work. The daily life for everyone involved was perfect. Padme did miss being around them, but Boba truly did form a connection to Padme. He was very fond of Sola, but his bond was to Padme and Anakin. Despite all of this, the Clone Wars would come down to simple timing. Dooku wouldn't die during Coruscant. Instead, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda would go to Utapau together, where they'd defeat the Droid General and the Countess of Reno. Luminara would hold her own at Kashyyyk, and Mace Windu would press the capture of Palpatine, which resulted in a whole thing, but it did lead to the end of the war. The process was long, drawn out, and stressful for Padme, but Anakin and Boba paid her a surprise visit like they had several other times throughout the war. They brought flowers, chocolates, and a couple other gifts. These visits were everything to her. It was a happy family, and now, with the war coming to a close, they could celebrate together. Boba and Anakin stayed with Padme for the next couple months on Coruscant. While some of Boba's more hostile tendencies still existed, it was through his art that he was able to express them, and transform what would be physical violence into gorgeous pieces. These things would have never been created had he stayed the path he was on. Despite them being away from Naboo for a couple of months, Boba would have a chance to go back home, because as it turns out, a piece he created was selected by one of the art commissions and he won an award and a chance for a scholarship at a prestigious art school. At his age, it was pretty unheard of, but in finding himself, he was able to create raw art that most people in his age group, and even those older than him, would never find. So much of his family's life would be through their own day-to-day. Existing in the village, in the countryside, was more peaceful than worrying about conflicts. And while yes, Padme's job as a senator was stressful, it never directly affected the lives of her family. She would stay as a senator until the peace treaties were finalized, and after, she would leave it behind. Jar Jar would become that senator, which is totally not terrifying to think of. Being that Padme and Anakin were still young, and their first was going off to art school already, they decided to do something radical. They came up with an organization to help people affected by the Clone War, and so they crafted a group called Art for the Heart. Pieces made by Boba and of course his classmates would be auctioned off so that mom and dad could go and get funds to assist their fellow galactic citizens. It was something Boba was super proud of. Boba would thrive at art school, and if it weren't for Anakin and Padme, he would have never found this life. He would go on to live a very successful life as an artist. He'd have art that would find their home in some of the finest art galleries and museums in the galaxy. His art was recognized, and he was seen as a cultural icon, an individual who could gather raw and unrestrained emotion and plant it so beautifully but also emphatically onto a single canvas, whilst telling a story. He was a generational artist that would have been lost in the criminal underworld, trying to find connection with someone that was gone. Boba's family would eventually expand, but they would maintain a low-key life, one where they didn't let galactic events restrain or constrain them. Anakin and Padme continued to be public servants, just without political positions, and it was through that they felt their completion. Obi-Wan, of course, was a part of the family, and while he never left the Jedi Order, it was through this family that he felt his own familial connection. It was a perfect little life away from the galaxy, one affected only by the decisions they made in their personal lives. And that, my friends, is our wholesome PP story. Again, special thanks to all the patrons: Benjamin Wells, Darth Maelstrom, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Groot36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Jango Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite D. Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Colin Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Wee was 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Seth Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortis Lakes of Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with 3 First Names, Darkseid 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So I kind of wanted to cover an idea here, an idea that Boba isn't necessarily his father. I think that it's very real that you could say that Boba was just being a bounty hunter because he wanted his father's approval. I think that it's not super far-fetched to say that he wanted approval and that by doing martial arts or bounty hunting things, he was just doing it to get his father's attention. We see in Book of Boba Fett him running to the window to watch his father take off and fly away. I'm kind of letting that be like an anchor for the story where he's just spending a lot of time by himself, looking for somebody, looking for someone to rely on, and he doesn't have that. And so giving him someone to confide in, but also someone that's relatable to him, but not someone he has to be just like, would give Boba an opportunity to expand. I think using Boba as an artist is a really different and interesting way to approach his character. I know he's a super cool, badass bounty hunter, but I think having him as an artist is a really different contrast. It's kind of unexpected, but also fits him in a weird way. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt right for him. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.